Republicans trying to seize the momentum after slugging it out at another contentious debate. The big talk of the night was the blow-up between Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy, which devolved into a series of personal insults.
I want to be careful to avoid making the mistakes from the neocon establishment of the past. Do you want a leader from a different generation who's going to put this country first? Or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
All right, Mr.
In which case, we've got two of them on stage tonight.
They're 5-inch heels, and I don't wear them unless you can run in them.
In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my daughter out of your voice.
Your adult daughter.
You're just
the easy
It wasn't just the taunts. The candidates digging into the issues about the issues that Americans care most about. Watch here.
Everything involving Bidenomics, I'm going to rip it up, and I'm going to throw it in the trash can on day one.
I have a son who's in the audience tonight who's 30 years old. If he can't adjust to a few-year increase in Social Security retirement age over the next 40 years, I got bigger problems with him than his Social Security payments.
Level with the American people here. Ukraine is not a paragon of democracy. So to frame this as some kind of battle between good versus evil, don't buy it.
My foreign policy is simple. You cannot negotiate with evil. You have to destroy it.
We'll put 25,000 more Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. We will defund sanctuary cities.
Of course, once again, the GOP's frontrunner was not there. Instead, Donald Trump held his own rally about 10 miles away and mocked his Republican rivals.
The thing, and I was watching these guys, they're not watchable. Standing in front of tens of thousands of people right now, and it's on television. That's a hell of a lot harder to do than a debate.
But we can't forget the biggest headline of the night. It was a short moment. You might have even missed it.
Do you think the Democrats would actually hire Greg Gutfeld to host a Democratic debate? They wouldn't do it.
I don't know, Greg. Your name was invoked. You get 30 seconds to respond.
Well, you know what? I can't tell if that was a compliment or an insult. You know, it says they wouldn't do that. But you know what? To me, it would be a demotion because I'm here saving the world. And also, they could not handle me moderating a debate. I would outshine them all. That was why the last time, Dana, I said, try Dana Perino. Because I said they needed Dana's lightness to balance out the intellectual depth of Univision. Anyway, Nikki's response, calling him scum, was a little harsh. It revealed a personal animosity. I don't think they're going to share a ticket. But I thought my favorite part was at the end, where both used their families as buffers, right? You know, it was like Hamas wasn't the only one using human shields. They were like going like, nope, I got my kid here, I got my kid there. I thought that was interesting. I thought Vivek, though, won the night because he was the most memorable and unapologetic. And his voice, by far, is the strongest. I mean, it's you know, DeSantis is a good leader, but he's not good at this, and it doesn't shine. And Tim Scott, I couldn't remember a thing. But him going after, Vivek going after the RNC for their inexplicable choices with the boss in the room, that takes some serious word rhymes with talls. And it's true because, you know, biased Democrats asking questions that usually guarantee they'll be loaded with antagonism means you have to untangle the question before you can actually talk about whether you're qualified or not. I think the TikTok thing, I think what Vivek, he made a good point that it's not about data collection. Republicans keep talking about data collection. It's about brain collection. So you got to look closer at home. You got to look at the kids. You can't talk about TikTok if your kids are on it. And TikTok is that rare phenomenon that can get healthy kids to mutilate themselves under the delusion of gender affirmation. It's warping young minds. So I don't think you can rail against TikTok unless you say, I don't want my kids on there. Because it isn't about data collection. It's about what's happening to kids.
There were no complaints, really, though, about the questions that I saw.
Well, I have a confession. I didn't watch the entire debate. I was changing diapers.
Yep, you got an important job.
You were at the White House?
Very good, Greg. That's why you should have co-hosted that debate. But what I did my impression was that Vivek dominated. And whatever it is about Vivek, he's able to capitalize on the format because he's incredibly charismatic, incredibly articulate, and he creates these breakthrough moments that everybody talks about. Now, is he the most charming person on the stage? He probably lacks a little charm, and that's his deficiency, but he's gotten into this sweet spot of populism where you are thrashing around at the powers that be, you're a little isolationist, and you don't sound like a politician. And Vivek doesn't sound like a politician, and he's connecting emotionally to people out there. Nikki Haley, smart, earnest, liked what you said about abortion. Sometimes she doesn't really translate with the grassroots, if you know what I mean. And the attack against DeSantis for not drilling in the Everglades. I mean, I don't know if anybody would drill in the Everglades or offshore in the beautiful beaches off there. DeSantis, I agree, Greg. I looked online after the debate trying to find moments. What happened with DeSantis? I couldn't find anything. And then I had to look, and I looked at what he said. He sounds good. Yeah. Makes the right points. But there's no sizzle with DeSantis. And I just don't think this race changes at all after that.
Judge Jeanine, what did you think?
Well, it's interesting. I think that the Nikki Haley calling Vivek scum was over the top. And I ran for office 5 times. I get it when they come after your family. Believe me, I get it. But I think, Greg, and I agree with you on that, I think that her reaction was more about Vivek saying not just that you're Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels, but that she's on the board of Raytheon, and she's on the board of Lockheed, and she's a neocon, and she wants to go in and bomb everybody. And I thought that that's what got under her skin, for her to call him scum. I thought just saying your daughter's... Yeah, but I did. But I think that Vivek is very much, as Jesse said, he's a populist. He said a lot of things that people wanted to hear. The biggest applause in the audience, and the crowd went crazy, when Vivek went after, is it Kirsten Welker? And he said, you know, you basically did a Russia collusion hoax for 4 years, and you're up here, you know, moderating this debate. And the audience went nuts. So in my non-scientific and certainly random Twitter poll of 20,000 people today, and I want to thank you for answering, 79% of those people thought that Vivek won. I think that Nikki on abortion and that whole issue, she is so well, she's thought it out so well, and I think that she is really on top of her game there. I think that in the end, DeSantis, he can do the job, but he can't get any excitement. I mean, you just kind of looked at him and go, oh, it's him again. You know, does he have his cowboy boots on again? You know, there's really nothing to say.
All right, Jessica.
Well, as the target demographic for the debate last night, I'm pleased to share my opinions.
Okay, great.
Just kidding, not voting in the GOP primary. But I did think that Vivek went too far. I thought it was about the daughter that she got so upset. I mean, she's run for office for a very long time. She knows what it's like to be personally attacked. That was a visceral mom move that didn't feel like a Raytheon thing to me, though of course she doesn't like being called neocon establishment and all of that. But frankly, I think it's benefiting her, and she should lean into it as much as possible, because there are 2 lanes. There's the populist lane and there's the establishment lane, and Donald Trump owns the populist lane. Until Donald Trump is out of this race for whatever reason, and I don't expect that he will be, certainly listening to how he's talking about it, that leaves one other spot. And DeSantis, Chris Christie, and Nikki Haley, and Tim Scott, who I think blew up his whole... I mean, it's been a slow roll blow up. And then last night when he looked at the results from the night before and said, we need a 15-week national ban, it's over. Like, that is the most inelegant thing that you can say after people in Ohio told you, conservatives in Ohio told you that they don't want to talk about abortion bans. But Nikki Haley, for me, presented as the most feasible candidate that could win a general election. If it's Nikki Haley versus Joe Biden, and I saw this popping up in liberals' Twitter feeds last night, that's someone who it's not their choice, but they could go to bed on election night and not worry about what the next 4 years is going to look like if it's Nikki Haley. Vivek's line about Ronna McDaniel, and what's going on with the GOP, I thought was really meaningful, that he had considered the election results. And that's something, if Republicans want to change this culture of losing, that I think is important to do. I continue to like Chris Christie. I think the way that he talked about the pro-life movement, also including people who are suffering from addiction, was really meaningful. And I don't know why that doesn't happen more often, that you consider everybody. It's not just about preserving life in the womb, but also taking care of people who are on the outside. And I just want to note, Donald Trump was having his rally, and he was throwing out lines like Kim Jong-un rules 1.4 billion people, and they have no doubt who the boss is, and they want me to say that he's not an intelligent man. That's the perfect juxtaposition for Nikki Haley, right? To talk about the fact that we don't praise dictators like that. We don't talk about other leaders.
You just pay them.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.